Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Erin and Lise. Let's talk about some small vans. So I own a small van, the one I'm in right now, and it is a 2012 Ford Transit Connect. When I first got my van, I was mostly using her for weekend trips, but then recently I took her across the country for 2 months, and I definitely have some thoughts. So I figured we'd talk about the positives of having a smaller van and then the negatives. Probably should end off on positive, but let's start with positive. So I have some notes and yeah, let's get into it. So the most obvious positive to having a smaller van for me is going to be the cost. So typically the smaller the van, the less expensive it's going to be. Of course, that's going to depend on the make, the model, the condition it's in, the year, mileage, all of that stuff. But in general, it's going to be probably cheaper if it's smaller. For me, I'm not really even gonna pretend like I had an option to have like a ginormous, awesome van with what I do and the money I make. Yeah, I would have had to get a loan that I would be paying off for a very long time. For me, I really just wanted to be able to pay my bills, and luckily I really liked the Transit Connect and it fell within my budget, so it just really worked out for me, and that's what I ended up getting. So not only is the van itself going to be cheaper, but your build most likely is going to be cheaper as well. Of course, this is all relative, but you're probably going to have less materials, you're probably going to have less of a bougie setup. So yeah, less money for the build. And then another thing that might be my favorite thing about owning a small van is the gas mileage. So because you have a smaller van, you're going to have to spend less money on gas. That means you'll have more money to go on adventures. So all around cost is probably gonna be lower, which is a positive. Now this next pro that I came up with kind of falls under like the usage category. And what I mean by that is that if you have a small van, you can still use it as your everyday vehicle. But for me, I use my van a lot after work. I use it to go to the grocery store. I use it like a normal person would use their car. So having a smaller van, I really like that it doesn't feel like I'm taking an RV with me to go get groceries. Another positive is the stealth component. So large vans can be stealthy too. Can you tell I get a lot of mean comments? Large vans can be stealthy too, but my van specifically, from my experience, my van doesn't look like a camper van because it's so small. I don't think anyone looks at the Transit Connect and is like, oh yeah, somebody has like a sweet setup in there and they are totally sleeping in that right now. That just doesn't happen because it's small. And it also has that look of like the cargo thing going on. Clearly there are large vans that have the cargo stealthy look too, but there's also vans that are like huge and clearly look like an RV. Also, by the way, I'm not hating on larger vans because maybe one day, you know, if you like, comment, subscribe, I'll be able to afford a really nice, amazing van. Not that this one isn't amazing, but I'm just saying the pros of the small van. So the next one can either be a positive or a negative, but let's call this one the rustic. So what I mean by this is that because the van is so small, you're not going to be spending a whole lot of time in the van. You'll probably be exploring more, cooking outside more, and the focus is going to be outside of the van. It's kind of like how some people want to go camping and they want to sleep in a tent, and some people want to sleep in an RV. Are they both camping? Yes, but one's, you know, a little bit more rustic and one is a little bit more glamping. And so with a smaller van, depending on your build, you're probably gonna have more of the rustic feel. And again, that can be a positive or a negative. For me, when it's a nice, beautiful day, it's a positive. When it's a cold, rainy day, it's a negative. Another positive for the small van life that I came up with is that you're always ready to go on an adventure. Hiking and backpacking stuff, extra shoes, a swimsuit, a towel. It's gonna be a stove, basic kitchen stuff. That's kind of what I keep in here all the time. And so that means that anytime I wanna go on an adventure, I can literally just drive. I know that I have all of the basics. Of course, large vans have that too, but I think it kind of runs into that situation where if you live in your van and it's larger, you're gonna have like your clothes in there, you're gonna have all of your belongings. This is really just the basics that you need for a weekend adventure, and I think that's a positive. And I think that's a positive if you want to keep it simple and you want to just get in the car and go. You don't have to worry about everything. I don't know, maybe that one's a stretch. Now let's get into the negatives of small van life. Okay, so going back to kind of more of the usage idea. If the use that you are using your small van for is living in it, you're probably gonna have a hard time. I loved my van when I was only doing weekend trips, but it definitely was a little bit more difficult when I was living in it for 2 months. I definitely felt like I was roughing it. It got crowded and I was wishing that I had a bigger van those days. When the weather isn't really the greatest, that makes it tough too, because you don't have a whole ton of space in here to just like hang out. It's very small, very cramped. That being said, there are people that have better builds in a Transit Connect that are for full-time living. This build specifically is not great for full-time living, but you could build a Transit Connect or a smaller van into full-time for sure. I think you would still prefer a bigger van if you want to live in it full-time, but it definitely can be done. Of course, some people have to live out of their vehicles out of necessity, and it can be done. I just think that overall a bigger van would be better for full-time living. The next con that I came up with is a lack of storage. Yeah, the smaller it is, the less stuff you can put in it. For me, I think my build does a pretty good job of holding everything that I need for camping, but I don't really have great storage for like extra clothes, fun personal items. Again, if your build is more made for that, you could definitely make some storage. But again, compared to a big van, obviously there's going to be less storage, which is a bummer. Because of the lack of storage, you're also going to feel like the van is pretty much always trashed if you're not keeping up on it 24/7. If you saw my last video where I cleaned out the van after a rough couple days, you will know that it can get very trashed very easily. Another thing related to storage would be that you can't have any of your bigger gear in a smaller van. My next trip, I'm going to have to get my mountain bike across the country. Haven't really figured that out, but yeah, more on that later. Subscribe. But if I had it my way, I would love to have so many more things in the van. I would have my skateboard, my mountain bike, I would have my rollerblades, my banjo. Heck, I'd even have a kayak if I could. And I mean, you can get like racks and stuff to put on the top or like a bike rack on the back, but I'm just trying to keep it simple. So sometimes I have to go without some of that stuff that I wish that I could have if I'm going on a long trip. Obviously for the weekends, I can still fit my bike in here. It's just not gonna be great for sleeping unless you want to cuddle your mountain bike, which is probably what I'm gonna have to do. So another con for small van life is going to be the lack of amenities. To me, this seems pretty obvious, and this is definitely one that I get the most hate on. The amount of people that tell me that because I don't have a toilet or the fact that I don't have a shower means that I'm not like a real van lifer. Okay, first of all, what does that even mean? I'm just trying to have a good time here and I'm trying to do it for cheap. So that's why I don't have a toilet or shower or sink or any of that stuff. And it's also because my van is freaking small, people. This van is very, very small, and I am going to be wanting to use all of the space I can on stuff that matters to me. And if that means that I don't have a toilet and I have to pee on the side of the road, I'm gonna pee on the side of the road. So there's definitely cons to not having these amenities like a shower and stuff like that, but I think people really need to look at what they're going to be using their van for. So again, I was using mine for the first 6 months for weekend trips, so I don't really need a shower for a weekend trip. That being said, would I have wanted a shower on the 2 months that I was traveling? Yes, that would have been nice to have a shower, but it was only for those 2 months. So I don't know, for me it's a con because of course I wish I had space for a toilet, but there's only so much space. I would rather use it on things that matter to me, and that's why I built it myself, because I get to pick the way that it is. And I want to say that a Transit Connect can have a shower, it can have a sink, it can have a toilet, it can have all of those amazing things if you build it correctly. But I am not your YouTube for that. There are people who have awesome Transit Connects that have all the amenities and more. That's just not my page. And that's okay because it's my van. You know what I mean? Another con that I came up with is the fact that when you have a smaller van, you're probably going to have some sort of setup where you're either like getting out your bed or you're getting out a table, some sort of setup where there's multiple configurations of the space. That can be a con because it can be kind of annoying to have to set up depending on what you want. And I'm sure if I had a bigger van, it would be really nice to just have a table all the time and to have a bed all the time. But I think that's one of those sacrifices that you make when you have a smaller van. It's like when you're in an RV and the table goes from a table to a bed. It's just part of it. The bigger the van, the less you're probably gonna have that. Again, it all depends on the build though. And the last con that I came up with, and this might be a bit of a stretch, but I sometimes feel like I have less privacy. When I am stealth camping at like a Walmart or something, I pop my window covers in. Those definitely work wonders, but sometimes I wish that I was in a bigger van that was like elevated, like up a little bit, like the windows up there. Sometimes I'm just kind of like, wow, I'm just in a car, which I kind of am. It's like a nice big car. But I feel like I have less privacy because the walls are so thin. I'm just like right at ground level with all the other cars. Kind of going along with privacy, sometimes I feel like, I don't want to say less safe because it's still like a locked metal box, but sometimes I'm like, dang, I wish I had a bigger van that was just like a little bit more hefty, clunky, more metal boxy. I don't know if that makes sense. But sometimes I just am like, wow, I bet people sleep really soundly in those really big vans. Yeah, maybe that was a stretch, but I don't know. So those are the pros and the cons that I came up with for small van life. Overall, I really do like my van a lot. I love everything that I've done and built. I love all the adventures that I've gone on with her. But sometimes I do regret not having a bigger van so that I could do more in it. But again, there are so many amazing resources out there for incredible, like smart builds with small vans, with Transit Connects. And I think because I started this van as just a weekend mobile, the bones of the structure are not really made for what it is evolving into. I mentioned in my last video that changes are happening to my personal life, which is kind of changing what I want to do to the van. I did quit my job and I'm in between like seasonal jobs right now. I have a little bit of time in between my two jobs that I am going to be making some improvements that are going to be better suited for what the future holds for the van. Next week's video will probably be some of those mini renovations and I'm really excited for them. Some of them were inspired by your comments, so just know that I read your comments. And actually, if you could leave a comment for some of the pros and cons that you think are worth discussing, and tell me, would you get a smaller van or a larger van? Do you have a smaller van or a larger van? Let me know. And I'll be interested to see what you guys say. Like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for next week's video where I show you all of the new improvements. Okay, bye. Oh, that's not the camera. Okay, bye.